with a new conservative government that will provide you with affordable homes and food on safe streets. That's the change we need, and that's the change we're going to deliver. Canadians are now voting, but we now know that life will get even more expensive if the Liberals get that fourth term. After the lost Liberal decade, Mark Carney launched his platform today promising $130 billion in new inflationary spending that will drive up taxes, food, and housing costs. Amazingly, Mr. Carney plans to run even bigger inflationary deficits than Justin Trudeau had already budgeted. Together, the previously budgeted Trudeau deficits, combined with the new spending Mr. Carney announced today, will mean $250 billion of new inflationary debt added on the backs of Canadians in a fourth Liberal term. This inflationary spending means higher taxes and higher costs of living and a weaker dollar. You cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. You need change so you can afford food and housing and live on a safe street again with a new Conservative government. Bloomberg reports that Mr. Carney has even gone beyond Justin Trudeau, abandoning even the weak fiscal guideposts, and Bloomberg is now predicting worsening fiscal position if the Liberals are re-elected to a fourth term. One Carney-friendly economist on Twitter said that this Liberal platform is a, quote, spendorama with even bigger deficits than Freeland's that just go on forever. And he said, I was hoping, and I'm quoting here, I was hoping, this is from a Liberal commentator, I was hoping Carney would pull the Liberals back to the centre with a focus on fiscal discipline. It's not to be. That's a fancy way of saying that Mark Carney's Liberals are even more costly than Justin Trudeau's Liberals, and they're all the same Liberals, the same Liberal ministers, same Liberal advisors, same Liberal promises, same costly Liberal failures. It's a shocking plan, but it shouldn't come as a surprise because it is consistent with Mark Carney's record. Everywhere he goes, his advice leads to more money printing and debt. And what follows? More inflation and more pain for working people and seniors. In December of 2020, Mr. Carney was asked if he was worried about that deficits and money printing would cause inflation. Even after he promoted those policies, his answer was that inflation was, quote, unlikely to materialize to a serious extent. Less than 6 months later, inflation skyrocketed. And when it did, Mr. Carney changed his tune and said that inflation was, quote, a good scenario and a sign that the economy was moving forward. As Governor of the Bank of England, he overshot the inflation target 5 of 8 years, and he was blamed for leaving the UK with 11% inflation, among the worst in the G7. He also triggered a housing crisis in that country just before he came back to Canada to act as Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. Now, no wonder the UK press said Mark Carney had the reverse Midas touch. And today, he's back at it again, promising hundreds of billions of dollars in more government spending and inflationary deficits to pay for it, just as he advised Trudeau to do over the last 5 years. He'll have to print even more money. That means more inflation, higher home prices, higher grocery bills, and higher gas prices. We need a change. We need a new Conservative government that will bring spending back under control by cutting wasteful handouts to consultants, lobbyists, corporate insiders, and others. That will scale back the bureaucracy and cap spending with a dollar-for-dollar law requiring we find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. Instead of creating more cash, we need to create more of what cash buys. We will cut taxes so you keep more of what you earn and kill inflation so the dollars that you earn go further. Après les décennies perdues des libéraux, Mark Carney a promis aujourd'hui, sans sa plateforme électorale, 130 000... Aujourd'hui, après les décennies perdues des libéraux, Mark Carney a promis dans son plateforme électorale 130 000 milliards de dollars en nouvelles dépenses inflationnistes qui vont faire grimper l'inflation, les impôts, les prix des aliments et du logement. Étonnamment, Carney prévoit des déficits inflationnistes encore plus élevés que ceux déjà prévus dans le budget de Justin Trudeau. Ces dépenses inflationnistes signifient des taxes et des impôts plus élevés, un coût de la vie plus cher et un dollar plus faible. On a besoin de vrais changements pour que vous puissiez vous nourrir, vous loger, y vivre dans les quartiers sécuritaires avec un nouveau gouvernement conservateur. Bloomberg rapporte que Carney a abandonné les orientations budgétaires de Justin Trudeau, c'est-à-dire qu'il va dépenser plus que Trudeau, et prévoit une détérioration dans la situation budgétaire si les libéraux sont élus. Et même un économiste libéral a tweeté aujourd'hui que le plan de Carney annoncé est un festival de dépenses avec des déficits encore plus importants que ceux de Freeland qui se poursuivront infiniment. Et il a ajouté « J'espérais que Carney ramènerait les libéraux vers le centre en mettant l'accent sur la discipline budgétaire. Ça ne sera pas le cas. » C'est une façon élégante de dire que M. Carney va coûter encore plus cher que M. Trudeau. C'est un plan scandaleux, mais il ne devrait pas se surprendre parce qu'il est fidèle au bilan de Mark Carney. Partout où M. Carney est allé, il conseille les gens d'imprimer de l'argent et de gonfler les dettes. Plus d'inflation, plus de coûts pour la classe ouvrière et les aînés. En décembre 2020, on a demandé à M. Carney s'il s'inquiétait de l'arrivée de l'inflation. Il a dit « Non, ce n'est pas un problème, il ne va pas en y avoir. » Plus tard, l'inflation est arrivée, 6 mois plus tard. Donc, il a dit « OK, c'est pas grave. En fait, l'inflation, c'est un scénario qui est bon et un signe d'une économie qui progressait. » En tant que gouverneur de la Banque de l'Angleterre, il a manqué son objectif de l'inflation de 2 5 années sur 8. On lui a reproché d'avoir laissé le Royaume-Uni avec l'inflation la plus élevée du G7 qui a atteint le 11 C'est ça le bilan, le vrai bilan de M. Carney. Ce n'est pas étonnant que la presse britannique dit que M. Carney a le touche Midas inversé. Aujourd'hui, il promet encore des centaines de milliards de dollars supplémentaires de dépenses publiques en déficit inflationniste, exactement comme il a conseillé à Justin Trudeau, mais encore pire. Si on ajoute les déficits déjà prévus par Justin Trudeau aux nouvelles dépenses que M. Carney a promis aujourd'hui, ça va être un quart d'1 billion de dollars plus de dettes sur un 4e mandat libéral. Pour financer tout cela, on va devoir imprimer plus d'argent. Ça signifie plus d'inflation, une hausse des prix des logements, prix des denrées alimentaires et une hausse de prix de l'essence. On a besoin d'un nouveau gouvernement conservateur qui va remettre les dépenses sous contrôle en réduisant les subventions inutiles accordées aux consultants, aux initiés des grandes entreprises, de l'aide à l'étranger, et j'en passe. Conservatives have already rolled out about 95% of our platform, including with costing on it, and the final document will soon be available, and it will cut your income tax by 15%, take the sales tax off new homes, unleash the resource sector to generate $70 billion of additional revenue for the government through economic growth, cut back on bureaucracy, consultants, handouts to corporate insiders and foreign aid to bring down the Liberal deficit and pay for our programs with real money. We will bring down inflation, deficits, taxes, and spending, contrary to what you've seen from this latest Liberal spending bonanza that we cannot afford for a 4th term. We need a change, and that's what this election is about, a change. A change so you can afford food and homes, a change so that you're safe on your street, a change to put Canada first. And we need a change also to make our people safe again. Because after the lost Liberal decade, there have been 50,000 people who've lost their lives to drug addiction. And that's what brings me here today. Liberal drug policies have inflicted immense suffering on our communities. Not only the people who are addicted to the drugs Liberals have paid to spread around our streets, but we also have the communities that are shattered by the resulting crime. Richmond has been particularly hard hit, and I'm very thankful to the Chinese community in Richmond for being the leading voice against these radical drug liberalization policies of the last decade. They understand we cannot risk a fourth Liberal term of crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder in our streets. We need a change to stop the crime and drugs with a new Conservative government. Today, I'm very happy to have with me some inspiring Canadians, Chris Esnard and Aidan Gills. Chris had a high-profile job that he was about to lose due to his addiction. His wife finally had to lock him out of the house and said she could never come back unless he got treated. At first, he had no desire to get sober. He went in because he was forced by his wife. And it took him about 30 days to turn his attitude around. He bought into the idea that he should try, and that it meant more to him to have his family than to have his drugs. He is now clean for 5 years. Thank you very much. Incredible. Amazing. And then there's Aidan. Aidan was addicted to what are called safe supply drugs. These are drugs that were actually given out by the government. And the government has this policy of paying for opioids, which is a great way to make profit for the same pharmaceutical companies who caused the drug crisis, and then handing them out. Now, the thinking is that because they're government-funded drugs, they won't be contaminated and addictive and lethal. Well, these drugs ended up in the hands of a vulnerable young man, Aidan. He got addicted, and he was on them for 3 years. You imagine the government actually getting people addicted to drugs. It's astonishing that this is happening in our communities. Taxpayer-funded drugs were supposed to be saving lives, but in fact, they almost took Aidan's life. But now Aidan, after going into treatment, was able to turn his life around and become drug-free. And he's rebuilding his life and inspiring others to do the same. Thank you very much, Aidan, for sharing your incredible story with us. Incredible. You know, I think of both of you as having a superpower. You know, some people might think, if you've been an addict in the past, that you have a weakness. I think it's a superpower, because if you can overcome that, you can overcome anything. When you encounter challenges or face tough people, you know they'll never have been, in their past, have been able to fight and win against such a challenge like that before. And now we need something from you. We need you to go out onto the street and grab the next guy who's stuck on the ground, pick him up, and bring him into treatment so that they can get better, and then they can go out onto the street and grab someone else by the hand and pick them up and continue that circle until we save all of our family members. It's an honor to have these men behind me. Canada used to be a place where hard work, where people, if you followed the rules and worked hard and looked out for your neighbors, you could build a good life on a safe street. A country where seniors could take transit without fear, and parents let their kids play street hockey without worry of stepping on a dirty needle or stumbling into a crack pipe. You know, in Abbotsford and other communities in the Lower Mainland, parents are actually having to go to the soccer pitch before the games and form a line and walk up and down the entire field to check for needles and crack pipes. There are some communities in the Lower Mainland where it's not safe to take your dog for a walk because they might ingest drugs and residues that have been left behind in the park and actually poison the dog. That is how absolutely out of control this problem is. Families are torn apart by illegal drugs, and the most vulnerable Canadians, those struggling with addiction, are being given free drugs, abandoned to die in our streets, and Liberals like Mark Carney call it compassion. He doesn't think it's a crisis. He says that that crisis only exists in the States. Well, no, it exists here. There's nothing compassionate about giving taxpayer-funded hard drugs that ultimately get resold to buy fentanyl, heroin, crack, and worse. There's nothing compassionate about handing out dangerous drugs and walking away while people who do not have the ability to say no to poison overdose and die. We've lost 50,000 people, more than died fighting for us in the Second World War, more than we could ever have imagined. Les rues ne sont plus sécuritaires, les familles sont détruites par les drogues illégales. Et les Canadiens les plus vulnérables, c'est-à-dire ceux qui souffrent de la dépendance, se font offrir des drogues gratuites et ils sont laissés dans la rue pour mourir. Ça, ce n'est pas la compassion. Soyons clairs, Il n'y a rien de bienveillant à donner de l'héroïne, du crack et du fentanyl et de le financer par l'argent des contribuables. Il n'y a rien de bienveillant de légaliser des drogues dangereuses. On a perdu 500 000 personnes. On ne peut pas perdre davantage. Donc, il faut donner un traitement pour sauver la vie de 500 000 Canadiens. Et c'est ce que nous allons faire. Now, we know that sometimes it's very hard to get people into treatment and recovery. And we're going to do it anyway. We're going to treat 50,000 people who are struggling with addiction, getting them off drugs, making them drug-free so that they can restart their lives like Chris and Aidan did. Liberals continue to push ahead with radical policies, though. Make no mistake, a fourth Liberal term will go even further. Mark Carney recruited a hardcore radical who was too radical to even be in the Liberal Party of Justin Trudeau, Gregor Robertson. And he said the impact of drug injection site on crime rates and expressions of community support or opposition should not be relevant to the federal government's approval process. So what he said, this is the former mayor of Vancouver, is even if drug injection sites are going to lead to more crime, and even if they face public opposition, they should go ahead anyway. That is absolutely insane. And the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. He said also that Liberals would be smart to lean into drug decriminalization. He also wants to defund and disarm the police. It's clear that if Liberals are re-elected to a fourth term, things will get worse. Mr. Carney's hand-picked star candidates are even more radical than Trudeau. But the good news is help is on the way. We will give judges the power, we will take action, and we will save lives. So we will act with compassion. Today, I am announcing the Conservatives will bring change. We will give judges the power to order mandatory treatment for those suffering from addiction that has spun out of their control. Possession of illegal drugs will remain a crime, but we would allow judges to order treatment as an alternative to prison when the offender's only crimes involve small quantities of drugs for their own use or other minor non-violent offenses. When someone is too sick to choose help, we won't leave them without hope. We'll help them take back control of their lives. For more serious offenders, we'll ensure that they will go to prison, of course, but there will be treatment in prison, and it will be an option for judges to require that the prisoner undergo drug treatment behind bars as a condition of ever getting released. This policy is not about punishment, it's about redemption. It's about getting people off the streets and out of addiction, back into a society where they can live rich, fulfilling lives and take full advantage of the Canadian promise. Un nouveau gouvernement conservateur va faire ce que les libéraux refusent de faire et agir avec bienveillance. On va donner aux juges le pouvoir d'ordonner un traitement obligatoire pour les personnes souffrant d'une dépendance. La possession de drogue illégale va rester un crime, mais on va autoriser les juges à ordonner un traitement comme alternatif à la prison lorsque les seuls crimes du délinquant concernent de petites quantités de drogue pour leur propre usage et d'autres infractions mineures et non violentes. Lorsqu'une personne est trop malade pour choisir de l'aide, on ne la laissera pas sans l'espoir. On va l'aider à reprendre le contrôle de sa vie. Pour les délinquants plus graves, ils vont aller en prison, évidemment, mais en prison, les juges vont pouvoir ordonner un traitement contre la drogue aussi et donner des conditions pour l'éventuelle libération que ces gens-là font le traitement et passent des tests de toxicomanie. Il s'agit de sortir des gens de la rue, les sortir de leur dépendance et les réintégrer dans une société où ils vont pouvoir vivre une vie riche et épanouissante et profiter pleinement de la promesse canadienne. To be clear, drug possession will still be a criminal offense. What we are proposing, though, is to give more sentencing options to judges so that they can put people in mandatory treatment. Now, some might look at me and say, you know, for a long time, Mr. Poilievre, you've talked about the need for more freedom, letting people make their own decisions. And I do believe in that. We need more freedom. And if I were creating a new political party, it would be the Mind your own business party. Let people decide for themselves. But there are some people who've lost the capacity. When you are hopelessly addicted to fentanyl, it is 100 times more powerful an addictive substance than is heroin. There's literally no free will left. It is impossible to make that decision on yourself in these moments. And that is why it is appropriate for the law to come in and take that person, put them in a treatment program, and let them have the hope that Chris and Aidan and so many recovering addicts now share with the rest of the world. We will also pay for 50,000 treatment spots, and we will do it by defunding the supply of powerful opioids, cutting back on bureaucracy, activists, and those who continue to perpetuate the problem, and instead putting the money into treatment facilities. We will close drug dens. We will shut down the treatment centers. We will shut down the drug dens and replace them with treatment centers. The drug dens that have been tried to be pushed on Richmond, that won't happen anymore. There will be no government-funded drug use sites under a Conservative government. We will ensure that the money goes to treatment, and no longer will communities have to go get up in arms to fight back against having drug use centres in their communities. We will shut down those centres. We will ban taxpayer-funded hard drugs and redirect those funds to real treatment, detox, rehabilitation, and recovery houses. We will impose life sentences on fentanyl traffickers and the criminal gangs flooding our communities with poison. If you profit off the suffering of others, a Conservative government will make sure you pay the highest price. And we will go further. We'll strengthen our borders to keep illegal drugs and guns out, and we will bring forward a choice for Canadians in the next election. It was a very simple choice. After the lost Liberal decade of rising costs and crime, can you afford a fourth Liberal term? With the same Liberal team, same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal ministry, the same overdoses, crime, tent cities, and out-of-control cost of living. No, you can't afford it. You cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a change with a new Conservative government that will cut taxes, cap spending, ban drugs, treat addiction, and bring home the Canadian promise. We need change so you can afford a home, change so you can afford food, change that you're safe on your streets. My message to anyone out there who's suffering from addiction is this: look to the stories of Chris and Aidan. They prove that you can turn your life around and do right by your family and your community, and then you can be an inspiration to all people. So hang on, have hope. Help is on the way. You can vote for change. You can vote for hope. Today, tomorrow, and Monday during advance poll weekend, vote early, vote for a change, vote for hope, vote Conservative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now give you questions up on the floor, and we will start with the call-in question from the phone line.
Thank you. Your first question comes from the line of Rob Shaw from Check News. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi, Mr. Poilievre. I was just wondering if you could talk about the importance of BC in this election as we enter the sort of the final stages. You're here again. You've held several rallies, quite a few over the last couple of years, especially in NDP-held ridings. Why such an emphasis from your campaign on the province, and how important is it to your campaign as we enter the final stages here?
Well, it's very important because during the lost Liberal decade, British Columbians have seen their housing costs double and become the most expensive in the world. There are hundreds of thousands of British Columbians who can't afford food. Crime and drug overdoses have overflowed onto the streets of British Columbia. People in BC are terrorized and afraid to go outside because of catch-and-release Liberal laws. So the question for British Columbians is, after a lost Liberal decade of skyrocketing costs and crime, can you afford a fourth Liberal term? Or is it time for a change with a new Conservative government that will cap spending, cut your taxes, bring down inflation, lock up criminals, and restore the Canadian promise? That's the choice: a fourth Liberal term or a change with a new Conservative government.
Thank you. We will take another question from the call-in line.
Your next question comes from the line of Gail Mpio from Envo 91. Please go ahead.
Monsieur Pierre Polièvre, que diriez-vous aux francophones vivant en contexte minoritaire
Sorry, just
qui expriment des
there's
inquiétudes?
two questions happening at once I couldn't answer. I'll just answer very quickly here, the one that just came here, and then I'll take the one that's coming in. So the gentleman who's calling in will get his question. I'll just quickly address this. Merci de votre question. Et c'est de Radio-Canada. Oui. Oui. OK. Merci beaucoup. Non, j'ai entendu. J'ai entendu. J'étais juste en train d'identifier le bureau. Puis aujourd'hui, M. Carney a annoncé 130 milliards de dollars de dépenses supplémentaires au-delà de ce que M. Trudeau avait déjà promis. Si on prend le déficit prévu par Justin Trudeau et on ajoute les nouvelles dépenses proposées par M. Carney, ça va être un demi-billion de dollars de dépenses, de déficit sur les 4 prochaines années de notre mandat libéral. C'est-à-dire que M. Carney est même plus irresponsable que M. Trudeau. L'idée qu'il allait recentrer les libéraux, c'est fou. Maintenant, c'est clair qu'il est encore pire que Justin Trudeau. Donc, mais si vous avez mentionné M. Carney et ses promesses inflationnistes, ces déficits vont ajouter énormément à l'inflation. Juste comme on a vu pendant les 5 dernières années lorsque M. Carney était le conseiller économique à Justin Trudeau. Bon, en ce qui concerne mon plan, vous l'avez déjà 95% de notre plateforme. Notre approche va réduire les dépenses sur la bureaucratie, les consultants, les cadeaux, le BS corporatif, l'aide à l'étranger, et on va mettre un plafond légal sur les dépenses pour réduire le déficit libéral dans chaque année. Et on va publier les chiffres confirmés par le directeur parlementaire du budget. Donc le plan, le choix, c'est est-ce qu'on va avoir un 4e mandat libéral de dette, de taxes et de l'inflation pour le logement et la nourriture, ou est-ce qu'on va avoir un vrai changement avec un nouveau gouvernement conservateur qui va couper vos taxes, contrôler les dépenses et rendre les maisons et l'épicerie plus abordables? C'est ça le choix. In English, so the question was about Mr. Carney's $130 billion in new spending promises. To be clear, these promises are above and beyond all of the spending Justin Trudeau had already budgeted for. If you add Justin Trudeau's promised deficits with the new spending from Mark Carney, a 4th Liberal term will add $250 billion of new inflationary debt that will drive up food costs, housing costs, and taxes. You cannot afford a 4th Liberal term. We need a change. On Conservatives, we'll bring that change in our platform. We will cut bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, handouts to corporate insiders and lobbyists to bring down deficits, taxes, and inflation. We will also grow revenue by about $70 billion by unlocking resource projects all across the country as validated by economists, independent economists. The result is our conservative plan for a change will mean you can afford a home, food, and a great life on a safe street, and that is the choice in this election. A 4th Liberal term of rising costs and crime, or a change with a new Conservative government that will cut your taxes, deliver affordable homes and food on safe streets. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now take a call-in question from the phone line.
Sorry, there's a question coming in. No, sorry. You're talking about the Liberal deficit we will inherit, and I have just said let's bring it down. Let's go to the question from the speaker there.
Bonjour, moi c'est Gaël, journaliste en vol 91. Monsieur Pierre Polièvre, que diriez-vous aux francophones vivant en contexte minoritaire qui expriment des inquiétudes face à un possible recul du soutien fédéral envers les services, les médias et l'éducation en français? Seriez-vous prêt à prendre un engagement clair en faveur de la protection et du financement de la francophonie canadienne hors Québec?
OK. Le son n'était pas parfait, mais à ce que j'ai entendu, vous avez dit, vous m'avez demandé si j'allais faire un engagement par rapport à défendre le financement et les services pour les francophones. La réponse est oui. Je m'engage à ça. Il ne va pas y avoir de coupure pour les communautés francophones. Nous, les conservateurs, nous supportons la francophonie canadienne. Nous avons supporté des amendements à la loi sur la langue officielle pour la rendre encore plus fort. J'ai déjà annoncé un plan pour mieux enseigner le français aux jeunes anglophones qui veulent apprendre dans les programmes d'immersion et plus élaborés, de favoriser l'immigration francophone et de pouvoir promouvoir le français à travers le Canada. Pour moi, je le tiens à cœur. Mon père est de l'origine francophone dans un petit village de la Saskatchewan qui s'appelle Léoville, très, très, très petit village. Il m'a toujours promis que si j'étais capable d'élaborer mon liste de vœux pour Noël, le Père Noël allait être plus généreux avec moi. Mes enfants sont francophones, ma femme est montréalaise et je suis absolument déterminé de préserver et promouvoir la langue française à travers le Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question.
Good morning. Lorraine Brett, the New Westminster Times. 4 years ago, my son was involuntarily committed under the BC Mental Health Act to abstinence-based treatment after spending the better part of 20 years on the streets of New Westminster as a homeless, mentally ill, and drug-addicted man where he overdosed 12 times. The results of this treatment have been near miraculous. My son is a different man today, sober, and in a job training program. Unfortunately, what we're seeing from the Liberals is more of the same. Tens of millions funneled to activists to promote safe supply, and the idea that it's wrong to curtail the rights of citizens to use drugs. How do you propose to counter the Liberal activist narrative?
Thank you so much. That is a very important question, and thank you. Sorry that there's a lot of light on me, so I couldn't see where you were speaking from. That's why I wasn't able to make eye contact. But your story is very powerful, and thank you for the courage of sharing it. I think that a lot of people listening right now who are struggling with a child that has an addiction will now see light at the end of the tunnel because you have shared that story. I want to hear this story happen 50,000 times. We're going to cut back on the government-funded drug supply. We're going to put the money into treatment centers that work, like the Oak Centre in Winnipeg, like the Harvest House in Ottawa and in Moncton, and like the countless other treatment centers that are represented by volunteers and philanthropists behind me today. Treatment works. It's incredible. You take people who are near lifeless, half dead on the street. You bring them into a treatment center. You give them counseling, detox, group therapy, physical exercise. You paint a picture for a brighter future, get them into a new home with a job prospect, and incredibly, they can turn their lives around. So this is the story that we want to repeat over and over again. And your son has a superpower. He's an incredible, credible success story. And I hope that he can go and multiply that far and wide. But it's going to take a change because right now the government is married to a radical plan that seeks to perpetuate the problem by handing out drugs, legalizing the worst drugs, they've actually reduced criminal penalties for fentanyl traffickers who are responsible for killing countless people. If you are selling large quantities of fentanyl, you're doing the equivalent of firing bullets into a crowded stadium. You might not know who you're killing, but somebody's going to die. It takes 2 milligrams of fentanyl to stop someone from breathing. And I'm going to lock up fentanyl traffickers for life. They will never get out of jail. They will come out in a box. And we're going to end this crisis. We're going to turn this around. Not only are our young people going to be saved from deadly addiction, but our communities are going to be safe again. Our parents are not going to have to look for crack pipes and dirty needles at soccer pitches in the Lower Mainland or anywhere else. Our kids are going to play safely in the streets and enjoy wonderful lives. This is a bright, optimistic future. And, you know, throughout this campaign, what I've really enjoyed is when people say they finally have hope for a change. Thank you.
En français.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Juste un peu de respect pour la langue française, s'il vous plaît. Je dois répéter la réponse en français. La dame a posé une très bonne question. Elle a dit que son fils avait une dépendance. Le gouvernement l'encourageait de continuer d'utiliser les drogues. Finalement, il a trouvé un traitement qui cherchait à l'abstinence. Je pense que ça marche en français, l'abstinence de aucune drogue. Et à cause de ça, son fils est sauvé. Il est toujours avec elle et je la félicite. On va répéter ça. On va financer 50 000 places de traitement à travers le Canada. On va mettre des trafiquants de fentanyl en prison pour la vie. On va sécuriser nos frontières. Et c'est ça le choix dans les élections. Est-ce qu'on peut se permettre le risque d'un 4e mandat libéral? Ou est-ce qu'on va changer des choses pour stopper les crimes, réduire le coût de la vie et faire vrai changement au Canada? And the answer on your question is that we're going to pass criminal code amendments that make it mandatory prison time for anyone who's caught trafficking or producing more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl. That's enough to kill 20 people. So the answer to the CTV's question was, how are we going to do it? We're going to do it through a criminal code amendment that very clearly says 40 milligrams of fentanyl, trafficking or production, gets you a life sentence with no possibility of parole ever. That's how we're going to do it. Thank you for your question.
We will now go to the final question.
Debbie Chen from Qingdao. As we know, the parents complain they have no access to the content of their teenage child conversation with drug counselor. Mm-hmm. And also parents cannot force their children to go to the drug treatment centers. So we know that's because of the privacy issues. But for the parents, they have different views.
Yes.
So what's your opinion about it? According to your announcement today, is there anything can be changed?
Yes, this is a very good question. And we saw the tragic story of a young teenage girl, and their parents brought her in. She was addicted to drugs. Their parents brought her in to a hospital, and they said, well, we don't have any treatment for her, but there are some other programs that distribute drugs. And tragically, she was found dead in a homeless encampment, a teenage girl. You can imagine what that means for a family. And so the government has put all this money into perpetuating drug use by giving out more opioids, counseling people to use hydromorphone, which is more powerful than heroin, and yet we can't get them into a treatment spot. I do believe that parents should be allowed to force their kids into drug treatment. And that delivery is mostly provincial, but our drug treatment plan will partner with provincial governments to supply funding for involuntary spaces for minors. So if you have a child who's addicted to drugs and you want to get them off drugs, we will empower the province to impose involuntary care on that child, and we will ensure there's a space for the child to go and get detox, counseling, group therapy, physical exercise, and other help to become drug-free.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press
Thank
conference.
you very much.
Ça conclut la conférence de presse. Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference. Ça conclut la conférence de presse.